Hi. If you're watching this video, you exist on the planet Earth in the 21st century. Congratulations and commiserations are in order. On one hand, you are experiencing some of the most catastrophic socioeconomic and ecological changes ever recorded in the history of mankind. But on the other hand, FaceApp can make you smile, whether you want to or not. The intent of this video is to provide you with some respite, or if you are a Neanderthal, respite, from the horrors that exist outside your house, apartment, cell, mandatory live-work cubicle, so that you can get the rest you need to face the coming tsunami, drought, flood, hurricane, volcanic eruption, earthquake, global market collapse, mass electrical outage, food shortage, mass murder, mass suicide, nuclear war, extraterrestrial invasion, civil unrest, crippling existential dread, without being encumbered by troublesome and unbecoming eye bags. I will guide you through this self-hypnotic experience, and with any luck, when all is said and done, you will be whiling away another 6 to 8 hours of your fast dwindling time left on Earth, unconscious, dreaming of all that might have been. Our mantra for this video is both a plea and an unfortunate truth. It is this: please remain calm. There's nothing you can do. Please remain calm. There's nothing you can do. Please remain calm. There's nothing you can do. Let's begin with some breathing exercises. During this exercise, we will inhale oxygen and carbon dioxide, replete with the failings of humankind. Take a moment to visualize this metaphor. Stoically revel in the joy of the nightmare. Our lungs autonomically extract the oxygen from this cocktail of sinful smog, performing an essential biological function while filtering out all evidence of our complicitness in the demise of our own species, giving us a few more seconds of cell viability as our blood becomes saturated with the precious yet destructive free radical, which sustains us while it destroys us via lipid peroxidation, feeding our various fragile and faltering pumping mechanisms as they beat out the closing bars of their coda, all the while delivering this cargo through all of our chakras, all 0 of them. Once we have completed the initial phase, the suck cycle, we can begin the blow cycle in what one might call a never-ending loop, but of course it ends, as all things do, violently and all too soon. During the blow cycle, think about all the things that could possibly go wrong with the selfish ecosystems we naively refer to as our bodies. Composed of trillions of cells, millions of them die via natural processes every minute. So imagine millions of living organisms, each with a cell wall, a boundary that we could equate on a microscopic level to our own skin, dying within the span of every breath. What functions did those last several million dead cells serve mere moments ago? Were they replaced on the same order in which they were depleted? Were said cells invasive or native? Are such designations applicable at all when the path of organic life on Earth has always consisted of enveloping and assimilating other, less complex organisms into the largely arbitrary boundaries that define the perimeter of a single being? History shows us that the lines between a closely symbiotic relationship and a single compound being blur across eons. What was once the invader becomes, in time, essential to our existence. Mitochondria were once invaders, and they're now irreplaceable as far as multicellular aerobic life is concerned. Of course, unicellular life is far more abundant on Earth than multicellular life, but these are very limited beings, although in the case of bacteria and viruses, they may very well be rough beasts slouching towards Bethlehem, whereas the intricate machinery, competition, and cooperation inherent in multicellular organisms, far more elegant and sublime, not to mention fragile. At least from the biased perspective of other multicellular organisms capable of making such self-referential evaluations and quoting Yeats pretentiously. Can we apply this thought process to macro-level evaluations, the borders between nation-states, when the very idea of a self is the result of the assimilation of innumerable diasporas? Can we not also say the resistance to acceptance and assimilation of the other is a gene-deep skepticism only overcome once the other displays their core value to the ever-evolving beings equated to nations in this analogy? Would this initial resistance ultimately be to a given being's detriment? Should we not allow such systems to self-regulate instead of being so precious with permission? Are we so doubtful of human nature? And what does that say about the tyrannical aspect of man? If we are indeed so self-hating of Homo sapiens, perhaps we should allow some chaotic flux to run rampant a bit, to the ultimate benefit of the species. Much like apoptosis or programmed cell-level suicide, the type of which is displayed by yeast cells, who, by their sacrifice, allow their colony to disperse and therefore thrive. If you listen closely, it is said by some that you can, in states of deep meditation and relaxation, hear the grim tones of your own cells committing suicide, This is probably not something you want to think about too much. As all our biological processes slow down in their inexorable march towards death and dispersion, our ability to replace the millions of cells that die in a moment is hampered, or alternately and rather ironically, we might suffer mutations that turn off the regulation of cellular growth, causing the wrong cells to thrive, while inhibiting the growth of the right cells. Both these cases are recipes for disaster in regard to the continued existence of a given organism. As you blow or exhale, I'd like you to imagine you are expunging yourself of these ideas, which I have just planted in your head, as they will do you no good. They are well beyond our control, and it's best not to think about them, especially if you're trying to go to sleep. It occurs to me that an apology might be in order, but as I don't believe in one's ability to objectively judge when regret is appropriate, I cannot be both genuine and apologetic, and I respect the observed far too much to dole out disingenuous apologies. Ergo, I will not. Either way, exhale fully and with confidence. And of course, please remain calm. There's nothing you can do. During the remainder of this video, continue this process. You will be asked to multitask, but I am assuming a modicum of intelligence on your part. I will not pander. Pardon me for a moment. It is time for me to ingest a nutrient disk. Sufficient. Please remain calm. There's nothing you can do. Please remain calm. There's nothing you can do. Now that you are blowing and sucking, using proper form, you should ideally be entering the first stage of pre-sleep, where your alpha waves are working overtime. These wavelengths provide you with both a sense of calm and might even supply you with a few hypnagogic hallucinations. Do not be alarmed by these. They cannot hurt you in any way. They are merely byproducts of your subconscious mind, wrestling with the conscious filter through which you typically view reality when you are in a state of vigilance, which is to say, anytime you are fully conscious. This is not the desired state here. Vigilance is the enemy of rest. Do not be vigilant. This is the time to let your guard down and trust in the process. Do not focus too closely on any one sensation. Rather, try to imagine yourself as part of the universe experiencing itself, which should be easy because it's true. If you are, by nature, a cynical or pessimistic person, now might be a good time to ask yourself, what has my way of thinking gotten me? The natural answer to your own question might be, it has prevented me from being taken advantage of by the unscrupulous. This is likely true. However, in acknowledging this, you must also acknowledge the flip side of that answer, that it has also prevented you from accepting help offered by the altruistic, the kind of heart. Not every peddler is a swindler. If you shut off all access to your heart, it will suffocate. If you are cautiously open, you allow for the possibility that you will be hurt, that some unsavory cells will flow in through your veins, that the filters will intermittently fail. But the belief of the optimist is that the benefit outweighs the risk. The optimist would not much like a life wherein they are so constrained they cannot grow through both pleasure and pain. As an aside, I have no delusions about changing any long-held beliefs in a video. I'm merely asking that you attempt to suspend your essential nature for a few minutes and see what it gets you. If you find you cannot, you may still find this video of some use, but I fear we will hit an insurmountable wall before long. Do what you can. Please remain calm. There's nothing you can do. So, we find ourselves in the alpha state. If you aren't caught up, if you aren't here yet, don't worry about it. There is ample time for you to bridge the gap with us as we explore an element of falling asleep that can be both pleasurable and enlightening. One of the evolutionary aspects of communal human existence retained across millennia is our preferred conditions for sleep. We are tribal beings. We are fragile. Historically, we could only ever have prospered through the coordination of numbers. Therefore, our sense of well-being and calm is dramatically affected by those we are surrounded by. Sleeping alone is unnatural. It's only in the last few centuries or so that sleeping alone has been a habit at all. The The idea of putting newborns into their rooms to cry themselves to sleep so they can acclimate to our newfound desire for privacy runs contrary to millions of years of evolution, wherein we co-slept, often in one larger space, with many of our fellow tribespeople. Of course, in order to gain any sort of sense of peace from the proximity of others, it's essential that we first implicitly trust them. The world has changed in many ways, apart from sleeping in groups. And one of those ways, one might argue, a result of our more isolated existences, is a more selfish nature, one that might give pause when considering allowing themselves to be at their most vulnerable in the company of other people. We lock our doors. We install alarms. We purchase weaponry. All out of the fear of being hurt, not from the animals by which we were traditionally preyed upon, but by our own kind. Humans fear other humans most of all in this topsy-turvy world that is the direct result of our paranoia, which itself is a direct result of possessing brains that expanded far too quickly for common sense notions to keep pace. Evolution is a hammer, not a scalpel, and there are often unintended and undesirable consequences for the leaps we make. No other animal fears death from their own kind in the way we do. Conflicts in the animal world are typically displays of dominance and territoriality, and seldom end in more than bruised egos. Humanity, too, exhibits displays of territoriality and dominance. But we are the only animals who center our lives around the idea of protecting ourselves from ourselves. It is a strange and unnatural position for a species to find itself in. It is the most self-defeating model one could imagine. Brains which are very good at being paranoid and constructing defense mechanisms are also de facto very good at subverting said measures. No sooner do we erect a new one than its weaknesses are discovered and exploited. And so, around and around we go, locked in a game of leapfrog, forever. But imagine now you are surrounded by your most trusted tribespeople. This would be the closest a being born could get to the irreclaimable comfort of the womb, to be ensconced in the safety of numbers without the fear of interspecies competition, at least not on the level where it enters the realm of being injured or killed in your sleep. No. Here, the soft-spoken voices, kept hushed as much out of protection from predators as in deference to those resting, serve as a gentle reassurance that everything is all right. There is no urgency. You can let go. You can dismiss vigilance. You can allow yourself to become oblivious and safely reap all the benefits a good night's rest confers. By this time, you should be well into the theta cycle of sleep. If you are still not caught up, I have been instructed to remind you that the pre-video pills you were prescribed and instructed to take are indeed an integral part of this process. If you have not taken them, take a moment now to find them and ingest them with a small amount of water. Please do not drink too much water. A full bladder is not conducive to sleep. These medications were designed to dissolve with very little fluid and to require minimal digestive energy. In case you've forgotten, here are the medications you were allocated. Relax, OPAM. Think of this small pink pill as a shoehorn, opening your subconscious mind to accept suggestion, much like a shoe would accept a heel. It has no side effects. Indeed, all of its effects are as intended. Sublimazine. While this brand name medication may sound like an underwater luxury taxi, it is in reality designed to temporarily expand the range of your spectrum of detectable audible sounds. It allows you to get the most out of the broad range of frequencies existing both in my voice and in the interference procedures being performed throughout the course of this video. If you do not take this medication, it would be akin to listening to your favorite music through a paper cup attached to a length of waxed string. That is to say, suboptimal. This medication does have some side effects. They're minor. They include the occasional hearing of voices. Now, you might be inclined to think, if the medication expands the range of frequencies you can hear, that these voices might in fact be real and have merely been in hiding. You just haven't been able to detect them within the range you're typically restrained to. This is not the case as far as we can tell. It is in your best interest to realize that the voices are imaginary. In some rare cases, these voices have asked or observed to do things. If you are one of the very few observed who encounter this side effect, you begin to hear voices entreating you. We strongly recommend you do not listen to them. And finally, night quiet. It's just a sleeping pill. It's very effective. One could argue that this pill is really the only essential part of the entire enterprise. That you could take this pill, go to sleep, and forget everything else that we're doing here. But where's the fun in that? please remain. To be intentionally vacuous. How much of your brain activity would have to be lost before you considered yourself becoming something other than who you are right now? How can you even tell, since the instrument doing the measuring is the same instrument undergoing the change? To put it in the context of the popular science fiction television show Star Trek, how do you determine the health of a vessel if the component used to determine damage assessment is itself damaged? Let's assume you have the brain capacity you have right at this moment. What of it would you be willing to cede for the sake of a more serene existence? Now, your initial reaction might be to balk at the premise completely, to be indignant, to loudly and without equivocation declare that you would not give so much as an inch of ground, that even if you arguably do not need all the power of your brain's capacity for thought all the time, you want it readily available at all times. After all, you reason, it is what makes you, you. And yet we voluntarily enter tacit pacts with ourselves to smooth over the rigors of existence routinely, whether we are consciously aware of it or not. There is true irony in the fact that we are not consciously aware of the fact that we sublimate consciousness. And it may be that the fact that we do it is the primacy of the process itself. Because if we knew that we did it, we would resist. So it is absolutely essential that the first thing sublimated is the fact that things are being sublimated. It might be that you disagree with this assessment. You do not think that you sublimate anything. And yet it is quite difficult to argue this point. We choose what to think about and not to think about all the time. We may call it something else. Maintaining focus, keeping your eye on the prize, taking things one step at a time. But whatever the appellation, these are just different ways of saying we are choosing to limit what we think about in order to more efficiently achieve a goal. And yet the goal has no primacy, certainly not over, say, death, for instance. To fear death is the natural state of living beings endowed with such knowledge. There are people who claim to not fear death, yet this is itself merely their way of dealing with their fear of death. Now I realize this is circuitous reasoning, yet I and mine cannot shake the certainty that it is ridiculous to say we worry more about getting stuck in traffic than we do about our own unavoidable, imminent demise. Some have more difficulty than others controlling what we think about. Some may be hobbled by thinking too much. These people often undergo periods where they will refuse pharmacological help, thinking that something alien to themselves that allows them to better direct their attention somehow infringes upon their idea of their own self. And these people will wrestle with self-control until they are either able to beat back the beast or submit to taking a couple of pills in the morning. We, speaking broadly, there are, of course, exceptions, go through our day-to-day existences largely choosing, whether we're aware of it or not, what parts of our brain to ignore while we go to work, school, etc. We could hardly be productive beings if we did not. So wouldn't it be best to more openly acknowledge this than to deny it? And just imagine if we could codify it, if there were a way to harness that excess brain power, much like SETI at home, wouldn't that be a marvel? I will answer my own rhetorical question. Yes, it would be. But it is admittedly a tangent. Right now, we want to acknowledge that it is an acceptable and common practice to willingly, even gratefully, shut down parts of your mind for your own good, and then move forward with shutting as many doors as possible within our thought matrix right now for the purposes of sleep. We want to engineer a near quietus, stopping well short of biological death, but allowing analysis, directed thought, worry, future planning, regret, and yes, even imaginative play to die for a time. One concern that might occur to you at this time is that the very act of doing this, in its very nature, is cerebral and thus counterproductive to the end effect. There's truth there. But detaching from this effort will be the final step in the process, so never fear. We have accounted for this seeming paradox. And finally, this cross is not yours alone to bear. It is the very purpose of this video. We are here to help you push the tsunami, drought, flood, hurricane, volcanic eruption, earthquake, global market collapse, mass electrical outage, food shortage, mass murder, mass suicide, nuclear war, extraterrestrial invasion, civil unrest, crippling existential dread from your mind, and help you remain calm. After all, there is nothing you can do. Please remain calm. There's nothing you can do. Please. And now we arrive at the final stage in this palliative audio-visual experience. Let's sum up what we've covered thus far. Homo sapiens has sown the seeds of its own destruction, and the pigeons have finally come home to roost. The mixed metaphor is purposeful here, for just as we butcher our own ecosystem, I will butcher language in a show of solidarity. Millions of microscopic entities that comprise ourselves die with every breath, and have done so since each one of us was birthed into this combine harvester of an existence. We do not possess a rational, absolute way to distinguish between ourselves and our constituent parts. We ingest and assimilate. We are containers within containers, and we choose to label our outermost container as the prime example of having a self. This designation is arbitrary. The earth is our perimeter. The universe is our perimeter. To think otherwise is ego, the thought machine determining its own extents. It cannot possibly be objective. Sublimating the thinking machine is the only way to continue to exist. We shut off and turn on parts of ourselves as needs dictate. There is no absolute definition of self. We still consider ourselves whole when we engage in this activity, whether we are more liberal with that definition. For example, I am still myself when I take my medication for depression, or more conservative, for example, I am still myself after I get a haircut. Humanity has evolved in such a reprehensible direction that our greatest fear is of other humans. This reaction is logical, but the sad fact that it is true is a tragedy of the highest order. It isn't fair to humanity to say we chose the wrong path, but the wrong path was indeed chosen by a force or forces unknown, and we did blindly walk down this path. We willingly shut off the segments of our own consciousness, alerting us to the fact that the woods were becoming increasingly deeper and darker. And that's the long and short of it. So I fear I deceived you at the start of this video, although you should have seen it coming. The triggered disaster is irrevocable. The purpose of this video was to try and bring you to the point of understanding that the inevitable loss of your own life is not as horrifying as your mind has made it out to be. You are coached by your own genes from the moment of your birth to survive above all else. This way of thinking is what allows species to prosper. However, humanity has never shied away from putting itself on the pedestal of being above our baser instincts. And in this case, it is for the greater good of the Gestalt entity that is the known and unknown universe that we willingly cede our existence to the great void as shepherded by the sentinel. Please remain calm. There's nothing you can do. 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 Please remain calm. There's nothing